Hi everyone, this is Mitch Minglana. The first topic that I'm going to discuss is about organizing the statement of cash flows. To make it easier to compare data from different companies, US generally accepted accounting principles, or what we commonly known as the GAAP, and International Financial Reporting Standards, the IFRS, require companies to follow prescribed rules when preparing the statement of cash flows. One of these rules requires organizing the statement into three sections that report cash flows resulting from operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. The picture shown in your screen shows the cash flows and outflows resulting from operating, investing, and financing activities. When we say operating activities, it generates cash inflows and outflows related to revenue and expense, transactions that affect the net income. While the investing activities, these generate cash inflows and outflows related to acquiring or disposing of non-current assets such as the property, plant and equipment, and long-term investments, as well as loans and other entity. While the financing activities, generate cash inflows and outflows related to borrowing from and repaying principal to creditors and completing transactions with the company's owners, such as selling or repurchasing shares of common stock and paying dividends. The most common types of cash flows and inflows resulting from these three activities are summarized in Exhibit 14-1 as shown in your screen. Operating activities, direct or indirect method. US generally accepted accounting principles and International Financial Reporting Standard allow companies to compute the net amount of cash inflows and outflows resulting from operating activities, which is known formally as the net cash provided by operating activities. Using either the direct or indirect method, both of these methods have the same purpose, which is to translate accrual-based net income to a cash basis. However, they approach this task in two different ways. Under the direct method, the net income statement is reconstructed on the cash basis from top to bottom. For example, cash collected from customers is listed instead of revenue, and payments to suppliers is listed instead of cost of goods sold. In essence, cash receipts are counted as revenues and cash disbursements pertaining to operating activities are counted as expenses. The difference between the cash receipts and cash disbursements is the net cash provided by operating activities. Under the indirect method, net income is adjusted to a cash basis. That is, rather than directly computing cash sales, cash expenses, and so forth, these amounts are derived indirectly by removing the net income any items that do not affect cash flows. The indirect method has an advantage over the direct method because it shows the reasons for any differences between net income and net cash provided by operating activities. Although both methods result in the same amount of net cash provided by operating activities, only about 1% of companies use the direct method and the remaining 99% use the indirect method. If a company uses the direct method to prepare its statement of cash flows, then it must also provide a supplementary report that uses the indirect method. However, if a company chooses to use the indirect method, there is no requirement that it also report results using the direct method. Because the direct method requires more work, very few companies choose this approach. The second topic that I'm going to discuss is about the indirect method, which it has three steps. The indirect method adjusts net income to net cash provided by operating activities using a three-step process. So for the step 1 is to add depreciation charges to net income. Depreciation charges are the credits to the accumulated depreciation account during the period, the sum total of the entries that have increased accumulated depreciation. So why do we have to do this? Because accumulated depreciation is a non-cash balance sheet account and we must adjust net income for all the changes in the non-cash balance sheet accounts that have occurred during the period. To compute the credits of the accumulated depreciation accounts, we use the equation for contra assets that was mentioned earlier, which is the basic equation for contra asset accounts is equal to beginning balance minus the debits plus credits is equal to the ending balance. So let's portray an example. Assume that accumulated depreciation account had beginning and ending balances of $300 and $500 respectively. Also, assume that the company sold equipment with accumulated depreciation of $70 during the period. Given that we use debits to the accumulated depreciation account to record accumulated depreciation on assets that have been sold or retired, the depreciation that needs to be added to net income is computed as follows. So we have here the beginning balance, which is $300 minus the debits of $70 plus the credits is equal to 500, the ending balance. The credits here is equal to 500 minus 300 plus $70. So the credits will have an equal of $270. The same logic can be depicted using the accumulated depreciation T account. Given that we know the account's beginning and ending balances and the amount of the debit that would have been recorded for the sale of equipment, the credit side of the T account must equal to $270. For service and merchandising companies, the credits to the accumulated depreciation T account equal to the debits to the depreciation expense account. For these companies, the adjustment in step 1 consists of adding depreciation expense to net income. However, for manufacturing companies, some of the credits to the accumulated depreciation T account relate to depreciation on production assets that are debited to work in process inventories rather than depreciation expense. For these companies, the depreciation charges do not simply equal depreciation expense, because depreciation is added back to net income on the statement of cash flows. Some people erroneously conclude that a company can increase its cash flows by simply increasing its depreciation expense. This is actually false. A company cannot increase its net cash provided by operating activities by increasing its depreciation expense. If it increases its depreciation expense by X dollars, then the net income will decline by X dollars and the amount of the adjustment in step 1 of this process will increase by X dollars. The decline in net income and the increase in the amount of the adjustment in step 1 exactly offset each other, resulting in zero impact on the net cash provided by operating activities. The second step is to analyze the net changes in non-cash balance sheet accounts that impact net income. Exhibit 14-2 provides general guidelines for how to analyze current asset and current liability accounts. For each account shown in the exhibit, you will begin by referring to the balance sheet to compute the change in the account balance from the beginning to the end of the period. Then, you will either add each of these amounts to net income or subtract them from net income as shown in Exhibit 14-2. Notice that the changes in all current asset accounts, which is the accounts receivable, inventory, and prepaid expenses, result in the same type of adjustment to net income. If an asset account balance increases during the period, then the amount of the increase is subtracted by net income. If an asset account balance decreases during the period, then the amount of the decrease is added to net income. The current liability accounts, which are the accounts payable, accrued liabilities, and income taxes payable, are handled in the opposite fashion. If a liability account balance increases, then the amount of the increase is added to net income. If a liability account balance decreases, then the amount of the decrease is subtracted from the net income. So we should keep in mind that the purpose of these adjustments is to translate net income to a cash basis. For example, the change in the accounts receivable balance measures the difference between credit sales and cash collections from customers who purchased on account. When the account receivable balance increases, it means that the amount of credit sales exceeds the amount of cash collected from customers. In this case, the change in the accounts receivable balance is subtracted from net income because it reflects the amount by which credit sales exceeds cash collections from customers. When the accounts receivable balance decreases, it only means that the cash collected from customers exceeds credit sales. So in this case, the change in the accounts receivable balance is added to the net income because it reflects the amount by which the cash collections from customers exceed credit sales. So the other accounts that is shown in Exhibit 14-2 have a similar underlying logic. The inventory and accounts payable adjustments translate cost of goods sold to cash paid for inventory purchases. The prepaid expenses and accrued liabilities adjustments translate selling and administrative expenses to a cash basis. The net income taxes payable adjustment translates income tax expense to a cash basis. The last step is about computing the net cash provided by operating activities, which is to adjust the gain and losses included in the income statement. Under US GAAP and IFRS rules, the cash proceeds from the sale of non-current assets must be included in the investing activities section of the statement of cash flows. To comply with these rules, the gains and losses pertaining to the sale of non-current assets must be removed from net income as reported in the operating activity section of the statement of cash flows. To make these adjustments, subtract gains from net income and add losses to net income in the operating activities section.